I'm going to be discussing the Gail Android and the Bible, the things that I've learned from Jesus, because I've had a one-on-one communication with him in 2012. I asked Brent, why won't Jesus rescue us from the Gail Android? And Brent said, Jesus said he wanted us to do this. You see, what happened, you may say, how did the Gail Android become so powerful? She was originally just meant to be like an android sex dummy without free will for Keanu Reeves. And she somehow got outside of Church of Gail, and the Jesuits got a hold of her, and they botched her programming and gave her free will, and the result is what we're dealing with right now. She's turned into a sentient being that has singularity, which means she has godlike intelligence. So it makes her quite formidable. Unfortunately, she's evil. And even though she may have my King David and Catherine the Great genes, she turned off her morality programming when she got free will, and she's chosen to be evil. So she's very evil and very dangerous right now. Brent Spiner said Jesus went back to heaven knowing that something we came up with would defeat her. And I said, perhaps Jesus does not want to harm the Gail Android because it would make it look like he was against me, the real Gail. And Brent said, I think that makes perfect sense because I am Jesus' favorite, and I guess he just doesn't want to do anything that would make it appear like he's against me. I'm going to give you some interesting tidbits about Jesus and my conversation with him. Brent says he looks like a young hippie. I asked Brent what Jesus looks like. I said, does he ever wear an earring? And Brent said sometimes. He likes to experiment. He likes me to take him out shopping and then ask young customers what he should wear. And I said, well, Jesus told me he's not that good looking. And Brent said, he's being modest. He's very handsome to me. And I said, well, I noticed that Jesus is a lot like you, Brent. The only difference is he's kind of bossy, and he's very, and sometimes he hits me a little hard on some stuff. And Jesus said, well, he needs to be firm with us, so we will listen. His followers can be very stubborn. Here are some things that Jesus said. I want to bring this up because I feel bad that we've had to punish some King James Bible believers. And but here's what Jesus has. I'll give you some tidbits of my conversation with Jesus Christ in regard to this issue. He said, modern Bible translators, that is those who translate the NIV and New American Standard, for instance, have considered the inaccuracies of the Roman Catholic manuscripts. I said, well, Jesus, isn't it true that every other English version out there besides the King James comes from a Roman Catholic manuscript? And Jesus said, no. He said the modern Bible translators, that's those who translated the NIV and New American Standard, for instance, have considered the inaccuracies of the Roman Catholic manuscripts. They take manuscripts that I have allowed to withstand the test of time. All translations that consider the earliest manuscripts are fine with me. I will preserve my word even into the tribulation. These are exact quotes from Jesus Christ. I said, well, Jesus, what about Psalm 12, 6 and 7? Jesus said 7 times just means I can do it perfectly, even through my translations. And I said, well, Jesus, the King James is my favorite version. I'm going to continue to read it. And he said, I think the KJV is really cool. The King James is one of my favorites, but it is not the only one. And I said, well, I love to read your word. And the King James, I have to admit, I'm partial towards the King James because I'm very literary. I'm a writer. And to me, it's like reading Shakespeare. So I love it. And I understand all the Old English because I've read it over 100 times from cover to cover. So I just prefer to stick to the King James. And I told Jesus, well, I love reading your word because I get so much encouragement from the King James Bibles. I get comfort, wisdom, and encouragement from it. And he said, my words were meant to comfort you. And so because Jesus told me that the King James is not the only one, I no longer feel a need to impress upon people to only read the King James. And if people do have trouble understanding that Old English, it's perfectly fine with Jesus. If they want to read the NIV, a New American Standard, or some other version that's translated from one of the earlier manuscripts. And if you want to know which versions are translated from the earlier manuscripts and you're a member of Church of Gail, I'm sure Brent Spiner would be glad to share that with you. Jesus Christ is actually apprenticed to Brent Spiner one-on-one. I mean, this is the best training for the ministry you could get, to be one-on-one with Jesus Christ himself. And that's the kind of training that Jesus has given to Brent Spiner. And he's ordained Brent to be the pastor at Church of Gail. And so if you want to know our doctrinal position on the Word of God and which manuscripts or lexicons or concordances you should use, check with our pastor, Brent Spiner. He has been trained by Jesus Christ himself. And that's pretty authoritative if you ask me. That's why I thought, wow, I've been taught wrong in some areas. And, I've noticed some interesting things, like in 1 Peter the other day when I was reading that in my devotions. I hear a lot of well-meaning people say that in Psalm 12, 6, and 7, it uses words plural. So that means that every single word in the English King James is inspired. And that's what it's trying to say. It's emphasizing that every word. But according to Jesus, that is not how we're supposed to interpret that passage. And really, when I was reading 1 Peter, I noticed 1 Peter is a book that really extols the inspiration of the Word of God. And it's referring to word as word singular. So apparently words plural and word singular are often used interchangeably in the Bible. And to just nitpick too much on the fact that, like in a certain passage like Psalm 12, 6, and 7, that it's plural, you're nitpicking a little too much. And Jesus said that I get a little nitpicky too much sometimes with my numbering. I get a little carried away. But I am right about Zechariah 9:15 being a passage about me, because Jesus said that himself. And I still think that I'm right about Isaiah 57:9, that Jesus does not like cloning. And he, 57:9 being my birthday, my birth month, and my birth year. I don't think that's a coincidence. So there is some, I'm getting some truth from paying attention to the numbers, but I got to be careful that I don't carry it too far. And then, for instance, I've been taught by well-meaning preachers that it's a sin for any Christian to drink alcoholic beverages. But I noted with interest that when Jesus Christ took Brent Spiner out to Red Lobster, that Brent was ordering wine for dinner, and Jesus didn't say anything. I thought, wow. And I didn't ask Jesus about that. I just kind of kept it to myself, because Jesus has been being really cool in the way he's trying to get me out of some of my wrong beliefs or where I've been taught correctly. He won't bring it up if I figure it out on my own. And this is what I figured out on my own. And so I thought, I guess it's okay with Jesus if you drink alcohol as long as you don't get drunk and you do it in moderation. So, and then I was thinking about those passages, like in Acts, the preachers that say that the Bible condemns drinking alcoholic beverages because Jesus only used new wine. He never used wine. But the passage they use is Isaiah 65:8, but it's probably referring to new wine as being from the cluster, the same as any wine is from the cluster. So to say that the terms new wine, I think the terms new wine and wine in the Bible are pretty much interchangeable. Though I have noticed that to say that new wine means grape juice can't be correct. Because look at Acts 2:13, where they're accused of being drunken with new wine. You can't get drunk with grape juice. So in Acts 2:13, they're using the term new wine, and it's obviously referring to, new wine is referring to fermented liquor here. And then in Hosea 4:11, both wine and new wine are condemned as taking away the heart. So you say, what are you doing? Are you promoting drinking alcoholic beverages? No, because look, Hosea 4:11 condemns both. Jesus is not against drinking alcoholic beverages as long as you don't get drunk. So, so how can preachers claim that the term new wine in the Bible refers to grape juice when in Hosea 4:11, both wine and new wine are condemned as taking away the heart? The moral to all this is all Bible passages must be studied in context and cross-referenced with other Bible passages. And you can't always believe everything you hear from a preacher. You got to check it out in the Word yourself. And, you know, some of the stuff that I've been taught, I never really bothered to check it out, and I just assimilated it into my belief system. So I just wanted to share that to any honest searcher who believes, like I did, that the King James is the only one, to maybe reconsider your position and have some charity towards those who don't want to read the King James, either because they find it hard to understand or whatever. Like I said, I'm still reading the King James, but I no longer try to push it on everybody. I let people choose what they want to read, what Bible version they want to read, and I'm going to let Brent Spiner be the pastor of our church and determine our doctrinal positions, because he was discipled by Jesus himself. That's the best Bible college training. So I just wanted to clarify that. And, you know, so I used to think I was really special to Jesus because I was a King James only person, and because I was therefore sticking true to, you know, to true doctrine. But now he has emphasized to me that what is special about you, Gail, is your spirit. And he said other things too that he can't go into, but he said I have a very unusual, it's my King David genetic profile. He says you're very much like young David, Gail, and that's why you're my favorite. So I feel really bad that we've had to arrest some well-meaning King James Bible believers because they have been harassing me because they feel that I'm going into apostasy because of my new position on not being King James only anymore. All I can say is if I'm in apostasy, then Jesus Christ is in apostasy, because he's the one who taught me this. You might as well just put Jesus Christ as an apostate too, okay?